What is up, guys? My name is Lex. As you can see, we are in the car. I just got off the turnpike heading north to Harris Pompano Beach Casino. We've been here a few times for this vlog, and today we're playing a private game. It's going to be big. It's a 10, 25, 50 game, $5,000 buy-in, $8,000 rebuys. Apparently there's a ton of action. There's a lot of money on the table. I've got $20,000 in my bag that I'm willing to risk. If it goes well for us, we could win 10, 20, maybe even $25,000. If it goes bad, we could lose all the $20,000 in our bag. Hopefully, we don't lose all of it. I also got a brand new iPhone as well, if you guys can tell. Hopefully, the quality is a little bit better, but we'll be there in about 3 minutes, ready to gamble. Let's get down to the table. Let's get to the action. Let's go. I take my seat at this 10-25 game. Buy-in for $5,000. Make sure to stay tuned all the way to the end of the video. The hands get pretty wild. First one here, I button straddled to $50. There's a call, a hijack raised to $200. With king-queen offsuit, I could 3-bet, but this time in position, I elect to just call, and there's 2 more callers. So first flop here, 4 ways to king, jack, 4, 2 hearts. Top pair for me. I look back at my hand and I do have the queen of hearts in my hand. Checks to the hijack player who bets out $500. Now we like our hand, top pair, good kicker, but he is betting into 3 other opponents after raising the $200 pre-flop. We could be beat here by king jack, ace king, aces, pocket jacks, pocket kings. However, with my hand, my only option is to call. Rest of the players fold and we go heads up here to the 7 of spades on the turn. My opponent's got around $4,000 plus left. If he continues for a big bet, not sure exactly what I'm going to do, but he slows down now and checks over to me. Once he checks, I think my hand's going to be good almost 100% of the time. I think this particular player would continue to bet aces, ace, king, pocket jacks, pocket kings. So I'm going to bet for value now. I just make it around 1/3 size of the pot. I make it $625. This is a pretty big bet. The pot is nearing $2,000. I think a lot of the time here, he's going to have hands like ace 10, possibly ace queen, maybe ace jack. Maybe he has a hand like a flush draw that he's looking to check call. After betting $625, my opponent goes into the tank for a while. A check raise here would be super disgusting, but eventually he calls $625. So I put him on a weaker hand than me. Going to the river here, a large pot brewing over $3,000 in the middle, and we see the 8 of clubs. If my opponent checks over to me, I think I'll just be checking back my hand. I feel like it's going to be hard to get value from worse hands with this size of the pot, but that doesn't happen. My opponent now leads into me for a $1,100 bet, and I am just super confused about this spot. The only thing this river card should change would be a hand like 9-10, maybe 9-10 of hearts. That went runner straight here on the river. Other than that, I don't see how this 8 could affect his hand really in any way possible. Did he check ace king or aces on the turn, then looking to lead out on the river once a safe card comes? I mean, what is going on in this hand? I don't think I can ever fold, but is he ever bluffing in this situation? Just doesn't make any sense. After thinking for about 30 to 45 seconds, I think to myself, if he's got me, he's got me. No way I'm folding top pair, so I make the call.
Good call.
I have a king.
Good call.
We hear the words that you love to hear when you make a hero call. My opponent says, good call, and folds his cards. King-queen is good to take down over a $6,000 pot here. Right off the bat, we're already up about $3,000 on the session. We now all take a break and head over to the steakhouse here at Harris Pompano Beach. I get myself a 16-ounce ribeye. I enjoy this for about 30 minutes and then get back to the table. We're sitting on about an 8.5K stack now. I do want to address something real quick about poker etiquette. A lot of comments say that I should wait to see my opponent's cards if I'm bluff catching on the river. I would never do that at a private game, especially against a recreational player. If he tells me you're good, I'm just going to show my hands right away. Now, if I'm up against a professional player, I'm going to make him show because I want the information. It's just pretty clear poker etiquette standards there. If someone says you're good and they play the game recreationally, I'm just never going to make them show their hand. Anyway, we are back at the table and raise pocket nines now to $75. I get 3-bet in the cutoff to $225. I'm around $7,000 or $8,000 effective with this opponent. Don't think a 4-bet is necessary here with pocket nines. I just want to see a flop. If I 4-bet and he 5-bets, it would be gross. So I make the call for 225, and we end up going here heads up out of position to king, queen, 5, 2 spades. I check to him. If he bets, I'm going to fold, but he checks this one back. Turn card ace. I check again, and he checks again. River card is a 6, and I think to myself, I feel like a lot of the time here he's going to have hands like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, maybe queen jack, queen 10. If I bet here on the river, maybe I could bluff him off those hands that are slightly better than mine. So I bet out $400. He snap calls with ace jack of diamonds. I show pocket nines as a bluff, and we get completely owned here. Oh, fuck. He played me like a fiddle.
Thanks a lot, man.
Moving along here, there's a call from a short stack. I raise ace 4 suited on the button. I get a call from the big blind and a call from the cutoff player, and flop trips on 4-4-6 rainbow. Checks over to me. I bet out 1/3 size of the pot, $75. Only the big blind makes the call. Heads up now to the ace of hearts on the turn, giving us a full house right away, and it does bring in a flush draw. My opponent checks. I continue for 125. And he makes the call again. This could be leading to a nice pot for us. And when the river card comes out the 8 of clubs and he checks to me for a 3rd time, I try to think, what could he have in this situation? Could he have a slow played 4? Maybe just a 6 he's hanging on to? Does he have 5-7 for a straight? Either way, I'm going to be betting, and I feel like just betting a little bit larger is the way to go. Just hoping he's got something to call me down with. I fire out 3 black chips. He snap folds, and we win. Just cruising along in this session so far, still up around $3,000. We haven't been dealt in any big pocket pairs until now. We've got pocket queens now. Early position I raised to 75. Next to act calls, hijack calls 75 before the button puts in a big 3-bet to $500. The button started the hand with a little over $3,000 in a stack. The action gets back over to me. Now pocket queens is a very good hand to get pre-flop. It's the 3rd best holding you can ever get dealt in No Limit Hold'em. But this particular player on the button doesn't seem to be getting out of line very often, especially pre-flop. When he puts in this $500 sizing when I raise and 2 people call, I feel like his hands are going to be very strong here. I basically give him 4 hands here: queens, kings, aces, and ace king. Now, do I really want to get $3,000+ in pre-flop against a range where I'm flipping or completely crushed? Not really. So I like to just call $500, and the player next to act calls $500 as well. We are now 3 ways to this flop, over $1,500 in the middle, hopefully no ace or king, and we do get our wish. It's a jack 7-5 rainbow board. Pretty great flop for me. I check under the gun plus 2 checks, and now the button slows down and checks behind. Turn card 4 of hearts, now bringing in a flush draw. Given the fact that the button did not bet, just really don't think he's going to have aces or kings now. Most likely he has ace king. So I bet out a sizing of $600. Feel like this is just going to get the job done here. I think this sizing can get called by worse hands like Jack X, smaller pocket pairs, and also price out hands like Ace King with only 6 outs. The under the gun plus 2 player folds, but the button now makes the call. I didn't think he had aces or kings. Is it possible he was slow playing on the flop? Maybe he flopped a set of jacks. Going here to the river. Worst card in the deck. King of spades. Ugh, gross. I check over to him, praying he checks this one back, but he doesn't. He fires out a $1,100 bet. I'm just beating nothing now, so I snap fold, and he ends up showing his cards that he got lucky on the river, showing Ace King offsuit, which was one of those hands I put him on when raising a $500 pre-flop. It is a flip, so can't get too upset, but for some reason I was actually pretty tilted about this hand, that I put him on Ace King, I even bet the turn, and a king came out on the river, but that is how poker works. Sometimes the river is not your friend. This now leads us into a very interesting hand of the night. I have 6-7 suited and raised to $100 from early position. There is a low jack player who 3-bets me, the same player who 3-bet me earlier with ace jack of diamonds and checked all the way down. He makes it $350. Small blind cold calls this $350 raise, and with a suited connector around $7,000 deep, In a private game I was invited to, no way I'm folding here, so I make the call, and we go 3 ways to deuce 3, 4, 2 clubs. At first I think to myself, holy shit, I flopped the nuts. But then I say, oh no, wait, no, I have 6-7, not 5-6. The action checks all the way around on the flop, and the turn is a king. This is a great card for the low jack player who 3-bet pre-flop, so when the small blind checks, I check again. The low jack player checks for a second time. Going now to the river, which is the 7 of clubs, which brings in that front door flush, and the small blind snap leads out now for a $500 bet. I don't really look too much into live tells in poker, but I have been playing a lot of hours over the last 5 or 6 years. The way the small blind bet on this river once the flush got there, it just made me feel like he wasn't too happy with the strength of his hand, that maybe he had a hand like King Jack, or even a smaller pocket pair that he was a little bit scared of the flush. Just felt like with his sizing and the speed at which he bet, he just didn't have a flush here. With that said, we only have a 7 in this hand. What should we do? Should we hero call, or should we maybe try to pounce on some of this weakness and turn our hand into a bluff? Like I said before, I don't think he has a flush at the speed he bet the river. I feel like the best hand he's going to have here is maybe King Jack or King Queen. I'm really not worried about the low jack player who 3-bet me pre-flop because he checked on the flop, and then he checked again on the turn when the king came. I don't feel like the low jack player is really going to have anything at all here, so I decided to turn my 7 into a bluff, trying to pounce on some of this weakness from the small blind player, and I raise it up to $1,800. I don't really like my specific hand to bluff with here. I'd rather have a club in it like ace of clubs or queen of clubs or jack of clubs so I could block them from having flushes, but I'm taking this one to the streets. I sense some weakness, so I raised $1,800, and we get the worst news possible when the low jack player asks the dealer how much it is. And given the fact that the low jack player hasn't snap folded to this $1,800 bet, I know he most likely has a very strong hand. It's possible he could have a flush, or I guess ace king. I mean, he did kind of slow play ace jack earlier, and after thinking for a little bit of time, the low jack player calls 1,800. We are screwed here. We're never going to win this one. Small blind snap folds, and I show the bluff. Low jack shows ace king offsuit with the ace of clubs, and we get schooled again here, losing a big pot, bluffing it off here on the river. The only positive thing to look back at after punting $1,800 on the river is that a lot of people remember big river bluffs. If people see that I'm capable of bluffing big on the river, it's going to help me in the future getting paid off. I'd rather be the player who's capable of putting in big bluffs than be the player knitting it up and only putting in money when they have the nuts. With that said, the low jack player played this hand perfectly, inducing me to bluff here on the river and making a good call. The small blind player had pocket 10s and said he may have folded, so at least we got one read right on that hand. The very next hand, I get dealt in pocket aces. I'm pretty tilted from the pocket queens, losing the flip and punting off $1,800, so I just grab a bunch of green chips. I don't even count them out, and I just throw them into the middle as a raise. Ends up being $250, which is a 10x open. This game is so good that I end up getting 3 callers off a 10x open sizing here with pocket aces. Flop comes out King 7-7 rainbow. I decide to check here out of position, so multi-way, and the action checks all the way around. Turn card's a deuce, and now I lead out for $350. I get 1 caller going to the river, which is another deuce. The board is double paired. Just one hand ago, I got caught bluffing for $1,800 on the river. I'm going to try to work with my image here. I actually have it now with pocket aces, so let's bet big again. $1,400 bet incoming for us. I'm hoping my opponent gets sticky with a pocket pair. Maybe he has a weaker king or ace high. Unfortunately, though, he folds rather quickly. We do get a small rebate back from that big bluff with 6-7 suited. One of the things I love about poker is the competition and the fact that you're just constantly learning every single time you play. It doesn't matter how many hours you've played in your life, you're just going to make mistakes. You're going to look back and say, man, why did I do that? Why did I make that call? Why did I try to bluff there? That was so bad. I really try to go back and dissect the hands that I play and try to learn from them, which is one of my favorite parts about poker. We started off good in this session, up $3,000. But after a series of unfortunate events, we're now around even. I add on for another $3,000. We're in the game for $8K, and after this, things do take a turn. I put on the button straddle for $50, trying to play bigger pots. Starts with the small blind who calls. Middle position player calls 50, and I bump it to 250 on the button with ace jack suited. Now the small blind player, who is a massive action player, re-raises me. He makes it $1,050. Now, unlike the player who re-raised me to $500 when I had pocket queens, this small blind player can have a ton of hands when he re-raises here. He's not always going to have ace, king, aces, and kings. He can have weaker aces, smaller pocket pairs, all sorts of wild hands. We're around $8,000 effective. I can't be folding my suited ace, so I make the call, and we get a great flop. So we think when it comes out jack, 7, deuce, rainbow. Top pair, top kicker for me. Small blind now slows down and checks. I'm not going to be checking with my top pair, top kicker. I throw out one yellow chip, which is $1,000, and my opponent makes the call. I feel like our jack's got to be good once my opponent doesn't bet this flop. He could have ace king, ace queen, maybe a smaller pocket pair to the jack, and when the turn card's the queen of spades, it does improve our hand now to the nut flush draw, but it's an overcard to my jack when he checks over to me. Feel like it's close between betting or checking, and ultimately I decide to pot control and check this one back. Going to the river, $4,000+ in the middle, and it's the 5 of hearts. So we do miss our flush, and the small blind checks to me. I'm not going to be betting. I check back and show ace jack, and he shows ace king. Wow. So we got lucky there on the flop. He actually had a big hand pre-flop. We end up taking down over $2,000 of profit in this hand. This game has gotten wild, big pots, straddles, and we get the dream spot. Aces, $50 straddle on, small blind calls, I bump it to 225, cutoff calls 225, small blind calls 225, aces go 3 ways to 755 2 hearts. With the ace of hearts in my hand, I love this board. My opponent shouldn't have a 5 very often. They could easily have flush draws, bigger pairs that are smaller than mine. Small blind checks, I bet 250, cutoff folds, but the small blind check calls. Feel like he could have a flush draw here, he could have a 7, he could have 8s or 9s or 10s, maybe a straight draw. So when the turn card's a 6 of diamonds and he checks to me again, I'm not going to be checking here with pocket aces. I throw out $700, 7 black chips going in the middle. From what I gathered so far against this particular player in this hand, he tends to play on somewhat of the conservative side, so I am a little bit worried that it is possible he could have flopped a monster, maybe a 5, pocket 7s for a full house. He could have turned a full house with pocket 6s, but he could also have a lot of other hands that I said earlier. He's in the tank, thinking over his options, and eventually he puts in the call for $700. Big pot incoming here. Going to the final card, which is the 3 of clubs. I like this card because the front door flush misses, but now any 4 makes a straight. Once he checks over to me on the river, I have to decide, is this a spot that I want to go for 3 streets of value? He just limp called pre-flop. It's definitely possible he could have these middling connecting cards. He could have a 4 in his range. He could have a slow played 5, pocket 7s, pocket 6s. He's not going to have any big pocket pairs like queens, jacks, or 10s. Feel like it's close versus this player, but ultimately I check back and say I have a pair. He says a pair is good. I show aces for the best pair, and he mucks what most likely was a missed flush draw. And just like that, another pot being pushed in our direction. Our stack is now over $11,000 in the game for 8K. We were up early on, then we were down and stuck, and now up around $3,500. What I'm about to show you guys next is one of the crazier hours of poker I've had when it comes to playing big pots back to back to back. There's a straddle on in this hand I raised to $175 with ace queen offsuit. The action player to my left makes the call, and we go heads up to jack 9 brick. I've got nothing on this flop, so I check to him, and he checks back, and we turn top pair, top kicker with the queen of hearts. Now a flush draw on board. I bet out $300, and now he snap jams all in for 2,200 bucks. I don't like this situation, but versus this particular player, he can have a lot worse hands that he's shoving here. It's possible he could have 2 pair of straight, but he can have flush draws, pair plus straight draws, pair plus flush draws, top pair, top kicker. It's a must call. When I put in the chips, he tells me immediately he has 2 pairs, so we're going to have to get lucky, and we do. On the second run out, we end up counterfeiting him when he shows Jack 9 offsuit. A 6 spot for him, getting it all in, 1 pair versus 2 pair, and unfortunately for my opponent, we end up chopping this one up. Lucky for me though, over $5,000 in the middle getting chopped. I'm glad we ran this board out 2 times. Just 2 hands later, $50 straddles on, I raised to $200 with Ace King suited. A beautiful hand. The action player to my left jams his $2,300 remaining in the middle, folds back over to me. I make the snap call here with Ace King suited, and we are running out this board 2 times, and on the first flop and turn and river, we completely miss. We just have ace high in that hand. On the second run out, we do flop a flush draw, and we hit the nut flush on the river. I show Ace King for ace high and flush on the bottom, and my opponent shows ace 10 of spades for a worse ace high on the top and ace high on bottom. And just like that, we end up winning $2,200 in this hand, some back-to-back big pots, which leads us in to the very last hand of the night. Short-handed now, I straddle to 50, small blind raises to $200. I defend on the button with ace 4 suited and flop 2 pair on ace 4 10 rainbow. My opponent now slows down and checks to me. I could bet, which I feel like I should be betting a lot of the time on this board, but I also feel like sometimes putting in some traps and checking back to maybe induce my opponent to bet or call down lighter later on is fine. So I put in a tricky trappy check here with 2 pair, and the turn card is a 7. Small blind now leads out for almost a pot-sized bet of 350 bucks. I could raise with my 2 pair, but I feel like that defeats the purpose of checking back the flop and trying to induce a bluff. I continue with the plan that I had on the flop and trap here and just call on the turn, keeping his bluffs in and keeping him in there with his worst cards. The dealer collects the chips and puts out a final card of the 3 of clubs. It doesn't really change anything at all, and now my opponent slows down and checks over to me. Once he checks, I feel like 2 things are going on. 1, he either completely has given up on his bluff and he's not putting any more money in the pot, or he has a hand with showdown value that he's looking to potentially call down a bet on the river. I'm going to try to capitalize on that bluffy image and the fact that I've slow played this hand and put out a $1,200 bet on the river, which gets snap called. Shit, is our 2 pair no good? But after looking back at his cards, my opponent mucks his hand, and over $2,000 of profit again is going in our direction. Back to back to back big hands we are playing here. I will have to say this session goes down as one of the crazier ones I have played in a while. We were up 3,500, then we were losing, then we were up, and we played some huge pots back to back to back to end up cashing out for a huge profit of $11,000. I was in the game for $8K. And after about 7 hours of playing, cashing out for almost $20,000. $11,000 profit is one of my biggest wins down here in Florida. Feels good when the cards go in your direction. It feels good to win some big pots and run good there at the end. A massive win for us, much needed after going through a 17K downswing in 1 week. I end up racking up my chips, heading to the cage and cashing out for the night. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see ya.